In the southwest, this week small village pharmacies were in the spotlight during the Commons debate. The government scheme which supports pharmacies comes to an end on the 31st of March, leaving some rural pharmacists wondering if their businesses can survive. Tamsin Melville reports.
St Mawes on the Roseland Peninsula, and the charms are obvious, but the cost of providing essential services to a very rural community like this come at a price. The village pharmacy has been here for around 70 years, but the future's uncertain. An extra £54,000 government cash it's been getting a year to help keep it open is under threat.
The impact of not receiving that money is that we may not be able to continue to provide pharmacy services in the future. The government really needs to assess the way they manage contracts. Small rural pockets of population still need pharmacy services, and they need to be funded adequately as well.
A petition has attracted hundreds of signatures, and for customers like David Grocott, the personal service on offer is a lifeline.
I take sometimes in excess of 22 tablets a day, and Faisal is very, very good. The service is excellent. If it's raining like it was yesterday, he delivered dressings for me. Or where else am I going to get something like that?
The pharmacy isn't alone in facing cuts to funds supporting rural services. This branch GP's surgery in St Mawes is now shut one day a week because the government is phasing out a previous guarantee of a minimum amount of cash for practices regardless of the number of patients they have. Every year for 7 years, the practice is set to lose a further £7,000.
At the moment, I feel discriminated against as a rural doctor. You know, the agenda is very much for large multi-service practices in populated areas. It seems to be that that's the direction of travel, and that's not possible on my patch, really, or not unless you start to provide decent bus services.
The expense of running one main and 2 branch surgeries on the Roseland is helped by being a dispensing practice. Generating income, Dr Hines says, is crucial. With the pharmacy in St Mawes also needing business, both say they support each other and that it's the system that needs changing. But there's not a lot of optimism.
It's difficult really to believe any of the policies because the last government promised us there would be no reorganisation of the NHS, and it was immediately the first thing they did. So one has to remain quite disillusioned with politicians at present.
The government says both funding schemes were only ever meant to be temporary, and NHS England says it's looking at the results of a consultation on St Mawes Pharmacy with the aim of securing the best possible outcome for local people. And it says the changes to the GP's funding mean money can be distributed more equitably across practices in the region according to the number of patients.
Ben, I know Labour have been very critical of the government dropping this minimum support for GP surgeries, but not saying whether you would reintroduce it.
Well, I wasn't quite clear about whether they were talking about surgeries or pharmacies.
They were talking about both, actually.
Yes, well, I certainly think that pharmacists and pharmacists are an underused resource in the NHS. We could use them much more. And when I was a health minister, we published a pharmacy white paper, which was revolutionary in terms of how we wanted pharmacies and pharmacists' roles to expand. My problem is that when this government brought in the reorganisation that the doctor referred to and gave all of the power to commissioning to GPs, my worry is that that has led to pharmacists losing out in terms of the services that they're now providing, and they're obviously under financial pressure as a result.
William, do you think special support, financial support, should be given to doctors or pharmacists in rural areas?
Yes, clearly. And actually, I happened to see some advertisements the other day, which was in reference to A&E, saying A&E is for emergencies, and please go and see either your GP or your pharmacist if you possibly can.
You need to have that option.
But you do need to have that option, exactly as you said. And what is worrying about this is that there's been yet another top-down reorganisation by the coalition government. And of course, the outcomes of it seem to be rather against people's interest, actually.
Neil, the thing I'm interested in is you're obviously, like a lot of rural Conservative MPs, a great campaign of rural funding and against rural underfunding. This looks like a Conservative-led government stripping out support for rural areas which Labour put in, which is a bit embarrassing, isn't it?
I think we haven't actually made the final decision on it. I think we'll have to also balance up to make sure that there are pharmacies within a reasonable distance. Otherwise, you cannot actually shut down small rural ones if people have got to go miles for the next one because of bus services and others not necessarily being available. So I think we've got to look at much more detail. I mean, naturally, one of the problems is that the figures that are done on the numbers and throughputs. And also, I think it's something else that I think we must, and I'm sure people do use them in rural areas, but I think it's a bit like the post offices as well. I think we've got to encourage people actually to go in there and use them more and more, because otherwise they don't get the income. So it's a combination of what can be put in there in public support, but also, from public funds, but also what people can do and actually go in there and use the pharmacy also.
Okay.